1926 Subpart V Appendix G. Reference Documents. Appendix G to Subpart V of Part 1926 Reference Documents. The references contained in this appendix provide information that can be helpful in understanding and complying with the requirements contained in Subpart V of this part. The national consensus standards referenced in this appendix contain detailed specifications that employers may follow in complying with the more performance-based requirements of Subpart V of this part. Except as specifically noted in Subpart V of this part, however, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration will not necessarily deem compliance with the national consensus standards to be compliance with the provisions of Subpart V of this part. ANSI/SAA 92.2-2009, American National Standard for Vehicle-Mounted Elevating and Rotating Aerial Devices. ANSI Z133-2012, American National Standard Safety Requirements for Arboricultural Operations Pruning, Trimming, Repairing, Maintaining, and Removing Trees, and Cutting Brush. ANSI/IEEE STD 9351989, IEEE Guide on Terminology for Tools and Equipment to be Used in Liveline Working. ASME B20.1-2012, Safety Standard for Conveyors and Related Equipment. ASTM D120-09, Standard Specification for Rubber Insulating Gloves. ASTM D149-09, 2013, Standard Test Method for Dielectric Breakdown Voltage and Dielectric Strength of Solid Electrical Insulating Materials at Commercial Power Frequencies. ASTM D178-01, 2010, Standard Specification for Rubber Insulating Matting. ASTM D1048-12, Standard Specification for Rubber Insulating Blankets. ASTM D1049-98, 2010, Standard Specification for Rubber Insulating Covers. ASTM D1050-05, 2011, Standard Specification for Rubber Insulating Line Hose. ASTM D1051-08, Standard Specification for Rubber Insulating Sleeves. ASTM F478-09, Standard Specification for In-Service Care of Insulating Line Hose and Covers. ASTM F479-06, 2011, Standard Specification for In-Service Care of Insulating Blankets. ASTM F496-08, Standard Specification for In-Service Care of Insulating Gloves and Sleeves. ASTM F711-02, 2007, Standard Specification for Fiberglass Reinforced Plastic, FRP, Rod and Tube used in Liveline Tools. ASTM F712-06, 2011, Standard Test Methods and Specifications for Electrically Insulating Plastic Guard Equipment for Protection of Workers. ASTM F819-10, Standard Terminology Relating to Electrical Protective Equipment for Workers. ASTM F855-09, Standard Specifications for Temporary Protective Grounds to be used on de-energized electric power lines and equipment. ASTM F887-12E1, Standard Specifications for Personal Climbing Equipment. ASTM F914/F914M10, Standard Test Method for Acoustic Emission for Aerial Personnel Devices without Supplemental Load Handling Attachments. ASTM F1116-03, 2008, Standard Test Method for Determining Dielectric Strength of Dielectric Footwear. ASTM F1117-03, 2008, Standard Specification for Dielectric Footwear. ASTM F1236-96, 2012, Standard Guide for Visual Inspection of Electrical Protective Rubber Products. ASTM F1430/F1430M10, Standard Test Method for Acoustic Emission Testing of Insulated and Non-Insulated Aerial Personnel Devices with Supplemental Load Handling Attachments. ASTM F1505-10, Standard Specification for Insulated and Insulating Hand Tools. ASTM F1506-10A, Standard Performance Specification for Flame-Resistant and Arc-Rated Textile Materials for Wearing Apparel for use by electrical workers exposed to momentary electric arc and related thermal hazards. ASTM F1564-13, Standard Specification for Structure-Mounted Insulating Work Platforms for Electrical Workers. ASTM F1701-12, Standard Specification for Unused Polypropylene Rope with Special Electrical Properties. ASTM F1742-03, 2011, Standard Specification for PVC Insulating Sheeting. ASTM F1796-09, Standard Specification for High Voltage Detectors Part 1 Capacitive Type to be used for voltages exceeding 600 volts AC. ASTM F1797-09 Epsilon 1, Standard Test Method for Acoustic Emission Testing of Insulated and Non-Insulated Digger Derricks. ASTM F1825-03, 2007, Standard Specification for Clampstick Type Live Line Tools. ASTM F1826-00, 2011, Standard Specification for Live Line and Measuring Telescoping Tools. ASTM F1891-12, Standard Specification for Arc and Flame-Resistant Rainwear. ASTM F1958/F1958M12, Standard Test Method for Determining the Ignitability of Non-Flame-Resistant Materials for Clothing by Electric Arc Exposure Method using Mannequins. ASTM F1959/F1959M12, Standard Test Method for Determining the Arc Rating of Materials for Clothing. IEEE STDs 4-1995, 4A 2001, Amendment to IEEE Standard Techniques for High Voltage Testing, IEEE Standard Techniques for High Voltage Testing. IEEE STD 62-1995, IEEE Guide for Diagnostic Field Testing of Electric Power Apparatus Part 1 Oil-Filled Power Transformers, Regulators, and Reactors. IEEE STD 80-2000, Guide for Safety in AC Substation Grounding. IEEE STD 10020000, The Authoritative Dictionary of IEEE Standards, Term 7th Edition. IEEE STD 51620009, IEEE Guide for Maintenance Methods on Energized Power Lines. IEEE STD 52420003, IEEE Guide to the Installation of Overhead Transmission Line Conductors. IEEE STD 9572005, IEEE Guide for Cleaning Insulators. IEEE STD 1048-2003, IEEE Guide for Protective Grounding of Power Lines. IEEE STD 1067-2005, IEEE Guide for In-Service Use, Care, Maintenance, and Testing of Conductive Clothing for Use on Voltages up to 765 kVAC and plus or minus 750 kVDC. IEEE STD 1307-2004, IEEE Standard for Fall Protection for Utility Work. IEEE STDs 1584-2002, 1584A 2004, Amendment 1 to IEEE STD 1584-2002, and 1584B 2011, Amendment 2, Changes to Clause 4 of IEEE STD 1584-2002, IEEE Guide for Performing Arc Flash Hazard Calculations. IEEE C2-2012, National Electrical Safety Code. NFPA 70E 2012, Standard for Electrical Safety in the Workplace.